Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Blues Talk, where again Dave, John and myself are going to look back over our unfortunate defeat against the All Blacks, also Leinster's victory against Treviso, and look forward to our game against Scarlets next weekend. Well boys, what can we say about that game at the weekend? One of the best games of rugby we'll probably ever likely to see.
One of the best games. It's the best game I've ever seen Ireland play. The most heartbreaking experience I've ever had in rugby. 91 was bad. Losing in 2006 for Leinster against Munster was bad, but nothing to compare to how I felt after that match. That was just... There just aren't any words to describe it.
Absolutely, yeah. It was. You were saying it's the best game of rugby you ever saw. It was the best game of rugby you ever had your heart broken by. Like,
Yeah.
it was just, how to see a game that good and to be ahead with 30 seconds on so little time on the clock that they couldn't even take a kick for a line out. They had to run it the whole way from the halfway line. So they did, sadly, but you'd nearly wouldn't begrudge them after that last few phases, even though I still would.
Yeah, but no, it was exactly like we said last week actually about them against England. The way that when they went behind against England, they just set their shoulder to the wheel. They didn't
panic,
didn't shout, didn't roar, didn't panic. Just did what had to be done to get the scores, and that's what they did against us. I mean, to a certain extent, it's a compliment to us that they had to actually do that to eke out a win. But that's great for the All Blacks. I'm just so proud of the Irish team. The way every single player played from 1 to 23, and the guys who helped them out in training and stuff like that.
Well, that's what...
Proud
performance like that
gutted for.
Oh yeah, a performance like that doesn't just happen on the pitch. It's a week's work off the pitch as well. So those guys deserve props as well.
But that's what Smith was actually alluding to at the start of this series, that he said it's not so much the results, it's the performance. And if we attain this level of performance against the All Blacks, then there's no reason why they can't continue this on, and it's going to be the litmus test really of this team, that they can keep it going at that standard.
Well, I disagree with that slightly, in that it's not just the results, it's the performance. It's the performance, but it's also the results. And at the end,
it's early in his tenure, Dave.
Oh, it is. But I just to develop the point further. At the end of the day, we did lose, and that's the point that Joe Schmidt himself made afterwards. Now, there is a culture in Ireland at the moment. I don't know whether it's a post-Roy Keane, in search of excellence kind of self-help book culture that says that everything about the moral victory is wrong. Now, we've been through moral victories before. Moral victories are losses, and we gloried in them, and we were wrong to do so. But at the same time, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Of course.
There was a huge amount in that game that was very, very good, that has to be taken and used again and again and again.
Of course. There's two ways it can affect your head as a player. That a kind of a thing. That one is, you can say, this is the best team in the world in their best year of the professional era, and we dragged a performance like that out of them towards the end, and we stunned them in the first half. And to go that far, on one way you can look at it is, we threw everything at them and we still lost. Oh my God, how depressing. We're going to have to work so hard to get back to a position like that again. But conversely, we were a nadger away from beating these guys. And yes, it's hard to replicate that again, but we can do it. We can get there.
But it was
it
was the way we played. We played with so much more aggression, precision,
and it was controlled
aggression too. It was, and our line speed was remarkably improved on the previous two games. It's the curve is upwards with this team. Well, certainly in the last week.
Yeah, and the other thing you can see is in the second try particularly, that's a Joe Schmidt's team's try.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we seen similar tries like that for Leinster, with offloading and guys been in support and not getting white line fever, and
was some awesome offloading in that try.
I mean, that you could see the progression within the team from the previous week, even from the Samoan performance. I mean, the performance against Australia, Joe Schmidt has since said it's not as bad as it looks. It kind of is.
Yeah, it was.
But you could definitely see an improvement over the entire series. In the areas that you wanted to see an improvement for. You had players who were coming in who aren't experienced internationals, who played like seasoned pros, seasoned internationals. I mean, Devin Toner was superb. Peter O'Mahony, for all that he's, you know, Munster captain, he's still very inexperienced at international level. He was
great.
superb. And I'm picking out the inexperienced guys. Dave Carney, Fergus McFadden over the series. Luke Marshall played very well as well. Paddy Jackson played well against Samoa. So at the beginning of the series, he was talking about widening the base that he has to select from. And I say at the end of this series, he can say, yes, I'm on that path, that I have done so.
Point I wanted to make about just when Jason said about controlled aggression, we did at the beginning of that was not only did we stun them, score 3 tries, you know, batter them, but we didn't give away a penalty. I don't know.
One penalty in the first half.
I was about to say, did we even give away? Okay, one penalty.
Devin Toner one, do you remember?
That's right. Of course it was. Yeah.
13 penalties in total in the game, which is extraordinarily low for a test match.
To hit them with all the stuff we hit them, and we were walking into rucks and taking the ball. This is the All Blacks. We were walking into rucks and taking the ball off them, and we didn't give away penalties. That's such an achievement.
And Dave's lookalike Gordon Darcy was just
Captain Birdseye.
outstanding. I mean,
He was.
I'd love to see the stats of the amount of tackles that he made, but he just didn't. He wasn't just prepared to knock the guy down. He was driving him back and creating turnover
And
balls.
messing their ball up in the rucks. He was wading through the rucks, and you know, and he was doing his usual, staying on his feet and making yards. But even when he wasn't on the ball, he was going straight in and kicking the ball away, messing their ball up.
Just mulliking through their rucks.
Totally.
The value that Gordon Darcy has always been to Leinster isn't in his line breaks. It's in that extra yard he makes when he's in contact with 2 or 3 guys hanging off him. Which, we've said it before, puts the opposition back on their heels, and it means they have to move their defensive line.
Once you break that gain line, once you get over that, it forces them to reset their defence and run around, and you know, you've got them on the back foot.
And so many areas of the pitch, there were so many positives. The scrum was good, the line out was good, the back moves were good, the defence,
But the difference again, going back just to the two performances against Australia and New Zealand, like, just to see the amount of guys we were committing to the rucks, and we were turning over their ruck ball, or certainly we were slowing down their ruck ball. We just weren't allowing them to present it on a plate, which we kind of did against Australia.
Well, one thing we did, and it's possibly one of the reasons why we kept the penalty count down, is we didn't actually contest for the ball at the ruck. What we tried to do was blow through the ruck, and we did it successfully on a number of occasions. Then instead of trying to go in, be the second man in, jackal in, get your hands in, we weren't doing that. What we were trying to do was drive through the gate. Yeah, we were doing that as well, but a more primary tactic seemed to be to drive through the gate over the ruck and actually to drive past the ruck. So the ruck itself became, you know, less relevant in terms of a method of ball retention, because what they had to do in order to stop us blowing over, they had to bring numbers in as well.
Well, the other thing was, I thought it was very interesting that there was a Doctor Who episode, a very, very iconic Doctor Who episode on the previous night, seeing as 2 of his relations were playing in the first half. It was Richie Who and Kieran Who were playing in the first half for the All Blacks, which is another compliment to Ireland, like how they kept those guys so anonymous, because like that's Kieran Reid is the best 8 in the world. You know, he wasn't the best 8 on Saturday.
No, Kieran Reid is the best player in the world right now.
Possibly, yeah.
Richie McCaw may go down in history as the best player in the world of all time.
Yeah.
But Sean and Jamie and Peter O'Mahony and, you know, the rest of the back five kept these guys really, really
Keane
quiet.
Healy ran over.
Yeah.
He's an animal. Stop with it.
But there, you see, the thing is, there are so many kind of incidents that you can take out of the game. I mean, RT last night highlighted Rory Best playing on with a broken arm.
Yeah. Only for a couple of minutes, but
still doing it, you know. And so there are incidents that you can take out of the game. The key thing is to replicate them, because that performance means nothing.
Of course,
nothing if we go out and have a tame, turgid Six Nations like we've had the last 2 or 3 years.
No, we can't.
That has to become the base level.
It does, and I think we've kind of hit, you know, the first one of the straps that Joe kind of set out insofar as he wanted to improve performance, which he's done. But also, as you mentioned earlier, he's brought through a number of guys who had very little international experience. Now, like, I mean, you know, Dave McCarthy asks a question about Toner. Like, I mean, Toner came through, and now he's played in these matches. He's come through with flying colours as an international second row. You've got other guys like Dave Carney's come in. Even Luke Marshall had a good game. I mean, you know, you went through a few of the other lads. Paddy Jackson had a fine game against Samoa. these guys now have international experience under their belt. So when it does come around, I mean, what is it, some statistic? 1 in 4 players are injured in a squad. So you're not going to have your starting best 15 on the pitch
Never,
come
yeah.
Six Nations time. So you're going to have to get these guys up to speed. And really, at the end of the day, the Six Nations is what it's all about for Irish rugby. Like, that's where they make their money from.
Everywhere else in world rugby goes on a 4-year cycle. World Cup to World Cup. Irish rugby doesn't. I mean, it's time people just fucking admitted it. Instead of pretending that there's a 4-year cycle in Irish rugby, there isn't. There's a 1-year cycle in Irish rugby. The Six Nations for the IRFU is the Alpha
cash cow,
and the Omega. The Rugby World Cup, a nice little learner for them, but they don't really care about it. It's the Six Nations.
They care about it, all right.
They care about the money that they get from it, but that's about it. It's the Six Nations, and successive Irish coaches have reported that. I mean, Eddie O'Sullivan has said he was told that it was his win percentage that he had to keep up. Declan Kidney was in the same position. Joe Schmidt will probably find himself in the same position. It's the Six Nations for the people say, oh, where will we be in 4 years' time? Who cares? It's where we are in the next Six Nations. Because now I'm not saying who cares as in it shouldn't matter. It should matter. But
Well, there's a huge priority on the Six Nations.
in the way
because-
in the way Irish rugby works, it's Six Nations. We're on a 1-year cycle, not a 4-year cycle.
Well, we were surprisingly lucky. I think I said it last week about the amount of forwards we had. We had it, barring Donnacha Ryan and Stephen Ferris, we had our full pack. That we had it pretty much through until Rory Best got injured. Little thing about that actually. Strauss. Yeah. Well, would Strauss be ahead of Best? Arguable.
It'd be a 50-50 call, I'd say. Yeah.
But Sean Cronin came on. He had a nice banker line out straight to Dev Toner, but he took that. He didn't panic, and he had a belter of a game.
But that's
really
that's good captaincy. I mean, I presume
and he got hurt near the end, and he knew he had to play on, and he did.
I presume Paul O'Connell calls the lineouts because he's the captain, and so I presume he's calling the lineouts. He is the most experienced lineout jumper as well. But I mean, that's good captaincy to come on and give a guy who is known to have consistency issues, shall we say, from out of touch. Give him a nice banker line out to one of his regular jumpers. I mean, Paul could have just easily called a nice middle ball to himself. I mean, that's a standard ball as well, no big deal about it. But he gave him a banker, which is good captaincy.
It is, but he gets a bit of abuse over his darts, Sean Cronin, and it, he gives so much more to the team that other hookers don't. I mean, he does.
He's so dynamic, though,
he's
isn't he?
so dynamic, and he could play centre. He could play. He's just.
But at the end of the day, he's a hooker.
If Court now, I know the standard line is if you can't throw into the line out and you can't scrummage, and you can't hook the ball. It doesn't matter how fancy you are in the back.
He's about as much use as a bra to a bullock.
Ashtray on a motorbike, whatever. But he's getting everything up to the right consistency level, but he's putting his heart and soul into the game around the pitch as well.
I would never ever question Sean O'Brien or Sean Cronin's. No, him either. He's scary. Sean Cronin's round the field ability. I'd never question his commitment, and I'd say his lineouts are getting better. They are getting better. You can see a progression year on year. But that's the one thing that's keeping him behind Strauss and Best. Is his even Rory Best? Is his lineouts?
I don't think any of our three hookers.
None of them are exceptional out of touch. I mean, none of the Irish hookers are. You look even further down. Damien Varley can be a bit shonky on lineouts as well.
Dundon, I think, is probably the best thrower
Dundon's probably
we have.
The best thrower we have, but there are other players who are better around the field. So, but in terms of your question, Devon Toner is an interesting one because I think he gets an awful lot of bad press purely because of how he looks. People say
gangliness is what
the gangliness of it. I mean,
people say he's not aggressive. No, he doesn't look aggressive.
Yeah, he's extremely aggressive.
Just get a mohawk or something.
I mean, I've seen people, and you still see people today say, "Oh, he needs to put on weight." The guy is the heaviest lock in Ireland. There's no heavier lock.
He's also the tallest.
He's also the tallest.
At 6
but
inches.
if he put on any more weight, you couldn't lift him.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Well, he did one lovely line-out steal. Really disrupted their ball.
But the thing is, you have to look at all the stuff he brings around the pitch, as well as, I mean, obviously line-out ball, he's a good scrummager. But in terms...
For a man so tall, I mean, you have to lose in the scrum what you gain in the line generally.
But
he's got on top of that though in the last few years. He's really got the power down, and he's even, whether he's on tight head, because sometimes he scrums down to the tight head. I noticed actually O'Connell was scrumming on the tight head side, which he doesn't do that often. But Toner does. I think with Leo Cullen, he's on the tight head side, and then with other locks, he's on the left. He's on the head side. So he can get the power down in the scrum. He's very powerful. You see his try assists and his pushes on other players when they have the ball.
Oh yeah,
He can drive a player over the line.
That's one thing we flagged here a number of
He's got
times.
the power,
Yeah.
And the one thing he has, his unique selling point, as it were, is as a footballer.
He's lovely hands.
There's
hands.
there's
That's
no
his Blackhall Gales
Mallow
GA
Kelly.
style.
Mallow Kelly.
But
level
there is no
hands.
finer footballing lock in Ireland. As a footballer, as a passer, as a user of the ball, he's superb. The thing that's against him is because he's so tall, it takes him a long time to get to ground.
Yeah, and back up again.
And that can sometimes be an issue. But his ball retention has been good in the internationals so far. I don't think he hasn't been done too
Turned
often
over,
for it. So
Well, anyway, we got off to a wonderful start. Why don't we look at the first try, which was Murray's after about 3.5 minutes.
we'll take a look at it now as soon as my computer starts working.
It was a pretty good scrum anyway, very solid
Excellent
scrum.
Yeah.
Mhm.
One thing I like about Owens is he lets the play go even if the ball's
He
at the
does.
base of the...
Dave Kearney now ran into his man, ran into Sean O'Brien there. He could have been pulled for that, but he waved it on.
A huge burst there from Keane Healy.
Ouch!
Constantly getting over the gain line.
Yep. And changing the angle. I mean, this is all the stuff we said about
Was
Joe
that
Schmidt's
Mr.
teams
Towner
for the
there?
last.
I think it was.
Yeah, this is the stuff we said about Joe Schmidt's teams for the last 2-3 years. It's the way that the angle changes every time. So their defensive line is look at that ruck, and that's fantastic.
That was a flanker's try there.
That was the difference from last week, that our ruck ball was so much quicker
from Murray.
Yeah,
than against Australia.
that gives Murray was dead right to take that break, for example, because we generated such a quick ball from the ruck. It gave him that opportunity, and from 1 or 2 yards, a guy the size of Murray, you're going to have to be a big bastard to stop him.
I just had a quick scan through the game earlier, and on the BBC coverage, and both Philip Matthews and Brian Moore thought that he knocked it on there.
There was. You can see it kind of squeezing out the side there.
I think it went down first though.
Well, I'd suggest that even if it,
There you go.
there you go. That goes backwards anyway. So
Was it control?
You only have to put pressure on it
Yeah.
downwards.
and you don't even have to put pressure on it. It's simultaneous contact is the actual requirement.
Well, you couldn't. He didn't really lose control of it, and like you say, it didn't go forward either.
No. But
Thank you, Connor.
But that was
Great to see a Munster, a Leinster, and Ulster scorer of tries as well, wasn't
But
it?
that was indicative of what was to come. Certainly in terms of the breakdown, it was just that clearing out was brutal. And indeed, if we'd been playing any other team in the world, they would have been broken by 20 minutes. The way we were hitting them. Unfortunately, we weren't playing any other team in the world. We were playing the toughest bunch of bastards that have ever been put on the rugby pitch.
Yeah, it reminds me of a story actually. There's a friend of mine was playing for Greystones about 15 years ago, and he was playing with a guy called Peter Muller, who went on to play for the Springboks about 30 odd times. Anyway, your man was saying that Muller would just go through, he would just meander through games. Every so often he'd just say, "Connor, give me the ball. I scored try now." And
He was Welsh, was he?
he was he was a Slovenian actually, but that just goes to show them like the All Black mentality as well. They really had to, when they were under the pump, they could just come up and bring it through the big play, and they did. But anyway, why don't we look at Bestie's try?
Swines.
This is one of the finest tries scored by Ireland in many a year.
Yeah, the handling for this try
Yeah.
was just spectacular.
But a little bit of a clever,
Jamie
a
making
clever play here as well. So there was
Ground in midfield there.
great
Offload
handling.
number one.
That was the one. Well, even
Slightly
at
backwards.
this, I
Jamie
mean,
will tidy that up for you.
yeah, that's it. He tied it up. He didn't lose his head.
He
He,
ran
went
back
back
into the
into where,
forwards.
to where he'd find
And
the
Sean
support.
O'Brien nearly got away on his own there.
That's just
lovely offload.
fantastic play from both players. Actually, the offload was a bit soft, but Conor Murray did very well with
He
it.
did very well to catch it.
Yeah.
He thought Sean O'Brien was going to be in there. He got man on who done the way across. Daddy's not my man.
Rory Best.
Rory
I mean,
Best.
you're not going to stop him from that range. I mean, he's as tough as they come.
He is.
But it reminded me a little bit of the move that we did in the final against Northampton, where it was actually O'Driscoll that went
Yeah.
through the middle of the ruck and set up the try for Sexton.
But that was classic Joe Smith rugby. That was. I mean, that's like
It was
we.
playing heads up rugby.
Yeah.
You saw that there was no marker at the ruck, and O'Brien went straight through instead of just setting it up for
Yeah.
go through the
Best
phases.
lays the ball off to Healy and then follows for the offload.
That's right.
And how many times have we said the guy offloading the ball isn't the important one? He's the guy in support. Is the key if you're playing an offloading game. And what we see there is guys breaking their balls to be up in support, which they weren't doing against Australia. So I mean, it's hard to measure how much better and how much sharper the performance was against Australia than it was against Australia.
Yep. And when we look at Rob's try,
Well, if you know, it's
Fortuitous one, this really
I mean, we could have been pinged for this.
high tackle.
Yeah.
That's the one where he looks up.
Yeah. But you know, good heads up, good heads up play. The opportunity is there, and he just takes and he puts the foot down.
I don't know how Reid looked like he was kind of jogging, but he still managed to.
Oh, Reid can shift. But
yeah.
you'd expect an international back.
yeah. What he did was he narrowed the angle then for Sexton, who unfortunately missed this kick, missed the conversion.
Well, I'd say after once they were at the point where they were parallel to one another, Reid had given up chance of making the try saver, and his entire concentration was on closing off that angle. Yeah. Which just you can actually see Reid on you can see it in that, and you can see it in this again. If you actually watch Reid, he actually changes the angle he's running, not to try and make the tackle. You'll see it here, right? He's trying to close off the tackle, and then he changes his angle. See there, just to close off the angle for the kick. He's not trying to catch him anymore.
Yeah,
I was in hog heaven at that stage.
But that's the steel trap precision that the All Black mind works on, you know. It's like how many times have you seen a guy who's once the tackle isn't a possibility, they give up?
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it was the difference is the winning and the losing of the match, or the winning and the drawing of the match.
Yeah.
If you want to look at it that way,
Like, we spoke an awful lot about the good things and the positive things in the game, but there was a few negatives as well.
No, quite a few negatives.
There were, and I thought some of our kicking was poor. You know, like
the most important negative. Sorry, we just watched 3 tries, right? We didn't score again for the next. Like we
scored a pen.
We scored a penalty,
and then for 60 minutes.
And then for 60 minutes we didn't score.
Yeah.
I mean that's it's the logical point to take go on from there.
But we had possession, and we seemed to panic and kick. But like, I've no problem with people kicking the ball, but you know, the All Blacks didn't kick very often. But when they did, they either kicked lovely balls that went into touch, or they kicked through for their try. We just seemed to panic and get rid of it and hoof it down the pitch, but with no particular direction, you know, just get it out of my area.
Guys were just putting their boot through the ball. That's all. They were just trying to get length, and the All Blacks knew this, and they were dropping back, and the balls were just dropping into their breadbasket. The one weakness in Conor Murray's game is his box kicking. It's the one weak. Now, it's something that can be worked on because he's only a young fella, you know. It's not like he does be doing anything else on his time off. So the one thing that he needs to work on is his box kicking. He gets the box kicking right. I mean, all the talk about him being the next Mike Phillips, forget that. He'd be the first Conor Murray, if you like, because that's the one weakness in his game, and it's not even a constant weakness. I mean, most of his box kicks are good. It's when he gets the consistency.
Yeah, I remember
he's a goal kicker as well. Don't forget.
He's a very good goal kicker.
I was at the Ireland-France game just back in March, and I think it was Jackson was playing that day, and he took on Murray took on all the responsibilities of the kicking that day. And he played.
He thought he was Ruin Pienaar.
But I thought he played very well.
He played very well that day.
But I just thought that. But it's not just Murray. Like, you know, there was other times. You know, O'Driscoll tried to grub her through. It didn't work again. Carney had some clearances that didn't. You know, Sexton just aimlessly kicked it.
The kicking in general
something they need to work on
was at best average. From right across the board, everyone from Rob Kearney all the way up to, I think Peter O'Mahony had a good kick actually,
but he didn't make his touch.
So all the way from 15 through to 7, the kicking was poor, or at best average. No, I'm just highlighting the Conor Murray thing because the box kick from behind a ruck for a chasing runner, and Ireland have good runners, is a key tactic. It's the one area he has to, like we were talking about, what do players have to do to push themselves to the next level to make Conor Murray up there with the Will Genias and the Ruin Pienaars and the Dupreers. The box kick, if he gets that consistently right, he will be. There won't be any question about him being the next starting lines out scrum half, none whatsoever. This is the only small thing that in his game.
He's in the right age too. You know,
and it is only a small thing. I mean, it sounds like I'm criticising. I'm not. I'm trying to point out where he can go to become the best.
I also,
because he's the best scrum. He's the best scrum half prospect we've had in a long time, and I include really successful guys like Peter Stringer or Owen Redden, or maybe less successful guys like Guy Easterby or whatever.
It's a long time since Peter Stringer was a prospect.
I know,
in
but
fairness.
but that's how far back it goes. I mean, Conor Murray is the potential to become the most complete scrum half Ireland has had since the 70s,
Yeah,
the 80s,
I mean,
early 80s.
you're probably going back to someone like John Robbie,
Yeah.
30 odd years ago, that played for the Lions, and that's really the highest level you can get as an Irish player. And we haven't really had anyone, even though Stringer has 99 caps, I don't think he was ever really in contention to go on a Lions.
No, and that's if Conor Murray gets the box kicking right, he will be the best Irish scrum half since maybe Colin Patterson. Because it's just the one tiny thing that's left in his game to fix.
Yeah.
The one thing about that game as well is we did get injuries. Like Drico had to go off, Rory Best had to go off quite early in the game, and we reacted very well. Like the replacement, Luke Fitzgerald was a man possessed when he came on. He was really up for the game, as obviously was Cronin, and I alluded to earlier to him getting injured near the end and having to play on. Cause
that's actually a point that Craig Williamson makes, one of the lads from Twitter. Right. And he also mentioned McCarthy and also McLaughlin coming on, and for once, I know there was a couple of injuries on the guy.
He got hurt as well.
But like Schmidt's kind of used the bench more so than say under Kidney's regime. Bringing on Leo for 30 seconds.
There was one player who wasn't used in the 3 matches, as far as I can remember, and that was Isaac Boss the other day.
Yeah, the one guy off. He didn't make an appearance from the bench.
Only player that didn't get on the field.
But you've got maybe 30 odd players in the panel. And to use all of those in over the 3 matches, it's given those fellas experience, as we said earlier.
Well, again, it's like like we said about Schmidt before. He says, say Peter O'Mahony, go out and run yourself into an absolute standstill for 55 minutes, maybe an hour.
We have
McLaughlin to replace it. So don't you worry about your stamina. We know you've got an hour in you. Just go out there. And Peter O'Mahony ran himself repeatedly into metaphorical brick walls for the cause of Ireland on Sunday.
And we have Kevin McLaughlin. We've been feeding him raw meat.
And then they brought him. They were able to bring him off. He was happy to go off because he knew he'd done his job, and he knew what his job was. And that's the other thing as well. He knows what his job is. He knows how long he has to do it for. McLaughlin comes on and carries on the work. Now there was a slight drop off in performance after that. I mean, obviously the entire intensity level had taken some toll on the players. But I mean, there's no way that an Irish team previously would have been able to keep that performance up for 75, 80, virtually 80 minutes. Because they won the game in the 82nd or 83rd.
But like we were kind of talking about it last week, we might put up a great performance or for 60 minutes, as we did maybe in 2001, when I think it was similar enough scoreline until the second half, and then they just blitzed us. But like this time, we actually held out until 82 minutes. But I'm just wondering, like, were we a little bit naive? Like, okay, we got penalised when Jack McGrath went off his feet, but were we a little bit naive? Like, we were still competing for the ball. We should have just fanned out, like a bit like what we did against Saracens in Wembley.
I have 2 theories on this.
Saracens, they probably would have got through. Anyway.
They're slightly better than Saracens. I have 2 theories on this. Both of which are technically cheating. The moment the clock heads into the red, the entire back row should just grab the ball and fuck off up to the other end of the pitch and claim they thought it was out and they couldn't hear the ref. By the time it gets reset, all momentum is broken, etc., etc., etc. And the other thing is just commit a personal foul so completely egregious that the referee has to end the game and then they just take the year ban.
I think
for the
they
good
might
of the country.
see through that one, Dave. The only other thing, I suppose, is that we could maybe just have a look at the people that did play over the 3 games and who we get. I mean, we had our start in 15, which was a little bit of a change between each game, but only one man, of course, played every minute.
Mr. Reliable.
Every minute of every game, only one of them, Mr. Seamus Heaslip Esquire. Who else? I'd say Rob Kearney might have done, had he not been injured.
Rib tickler.
He had a little bit of a rib tickler.
You managed to imbue that word with all sorts of perversity.
Anyway, we had Kevin McLaughlin come on for O'Mahony. We had Henry start the first game until he got hurt himself. In place of Sean O'Brien, we had McGrath starting and playing
man of the match role. We had Cronin, obviously, we've just spoken about.
Decky Fitz and Archer both got a run at prop. Decky Fitz did really well.
That said the better about Archer.
McCarthy was on, with mixed results. He actually came on
Thought
Sunday
he played
as
quite well actually on Sunday.
He
did, yeah. He played well enough on Sunday.
That was
but
the mixed bits.
Yeah.
He wasn't so good in the other game, but he's a little bit out of sorts at the moment. He'll come good again.
Yeah.
Both Jackson and Madigan got game time. Jackson got quite a lot, and Madigan got more on the field for more games, but didn't stay on as long. We had Dave Carney, who we saw actually come in and start a game the other day as well. Luke Fitzgerald got on for Dricko. Robbie Henshaw also got on for Dricko. At one stage, and I think he also came on for Carney.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
So he's
multi-talented.
That's a guy who was in May 2012 was in school,
And
has now played fullback.
Today or yesterday
Signed a 2-year deal, 2016. Yeah.
That's great to see as well, to see him stay in McConnell. So that's a lot of added to that. You had the guys that missed out, like Tui, who possibly could have got a run, and is bubbling under there. Felix Jones is in the squad. Sherry, Cave, Martin Moore even had a little cameo in the squad. So they've all got. There's a lot of other guys, but they're all older guys who've already played for Ireland. But those guys got a little taste of the squad and got a. So from that point of view, it's a pretty productive little 3-game spell for Joe Schmidt.
Yeah.
It will be, depending on the Six Nations.
Yeah. Well, one Dave McCarthy asks again. He just wondered about Sexton and are the turkeys coming home to roost a little bit, because he obviously wasn't fit when he was taking that kick, and he's pretty battered at the moment.
He is a bit.
Has it come home to roost for the IRFU?
No. I mean, he could have dropped a bottle of aftershave on his foot, and he wouldn't have been available. So
You're such a fatalist, Dave.
It doesn't make any difference. I mean, we don't know. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. There is absolutely no evidence whatsoever to suggest that playing more games reduces players' longevity.
I know that's your theory, Dave, and I'm not disagreeing with you.
No, it's not a theory. I don't have a theory on it. That's the point. There is no theory on it.
But if that guy got a cold, he would have been rested by Leinster. And first of all, obviously, he wouldn't play as many games. And okay, Dave, fair enough. You can't say that playing more or less games is good or bad for X or Y player. I think it is, depending on the player. You often hear things like Mike Ross needs a run of games to get it up to the right level, and so if he doesn't play every week, he never develops. And you also hear the opposite. Say Brian O'Driscoll can come in out of nowhere and get up to speed in minutes. So every player is different. I just have the feeling that Sexton isn't doing too well from his
Was Schmidt wrong not taking him off sooner? I mean, he lasted 74 minutes.
It'll take Sexton, no matter whether you think it's the right policy or the wrong policy. It'll take Sexton a while for his body to adjust to his new situation anyway. So whether it's right or wrong, that's a given. The IRFU's turkeys haven't come home to roost because the IRFU didn't want to pay him what he was worth.
Pay his wages.
So that's the risk they took. They're quite happy for him to play 75 million games a season because they didn't want to pay his wages. It was their choice. They had a choice. They made it.
Was Schmidt wrong in not taking him off?
I don't know. I mean, that's a double-edged sword. Would Madigan have got the kick that Sexton missed? Quite possibly. I mean, they're both excellent kickers. Madigan would have been fresher.
I mean, look, anyone can miss a kick, but before the match, there was rumours
Aaron Cruden missed a kick too.
Oh, of course he did, and like even Dan Carter missed his kicks, and Johnny Wilkins missed his. Everyone is human in the air.
The question is, was he fit enough to take that last kick?
Or was he even fit enough 5 minutes beforehand? I mean, he lasted 74 minutes. There was rumours at the start that he did a fitness test. I don't know whether
that's right. Yeah.
But like Ronan O'Gara on the telly beforehand, he mentioned that he saw that he had a very small tear of his hamstring, a little bit of bleeding in it, but he didn't think it was a major issue. But I don't think, like, especially after he took the kick, and there was a picture of him running back, and he didn't look to be.
He never looked.
He didn't look right on his feet.
Yeah, and you need balance when you're a place kicker. You need to have.
Again, it's all post hoc ergo propter hoc. I mean, whatever
you're having yourself.
Would we be having this conversation if he'd taken the kick, if he scored?
Well, would he have been substituted?
But you see, that's what I mean. I mean,
Yeah.
hindsight wisdom is easy in hindsight.
Antes and testicles and
Yeah.
things like
That's
that.
the thing. I mean,
If-
in retrospect, maybe he should have come off 5 minutes earlier.
Yeah,
But that's
retrospect.
That's in retrospect. I mean, at the time, with 5 minutes to go, we're leading against the All Blacks. Do you take off your talismanic out half?
Yeah,
Well, they were going to take him off. I mean, that decision just didn't happen when he just missed the kick. You know what I mean? Like, that was presumably on the sideline. They were ready to take him off. They'd made that decision, and then we were awarded a penalty. And then he said, "Okay, well, Johnny will stay on for the kick, and then we'll take him off."
But you see, that's the thing. I mean, we're working from imperfect knowledge because we don't know. Was it the strain of the kick that
quite often
that
happens,
pushed
yeah.
the muscle beyond what he could quite happily finish the 5 minutes
Well,
of the game out with?
he's had
So-
hip issues and he's had hamstring issues, and he's come through. He's probably got a bit of sellotape and baling twine and stuff holding him together
Nobody's
there.
fit.
You know,
Nobody on a rugby pitch. Once you reach this stage of the season, nobody's fit. Everyone is injured at some.
Imagine what the All Blacks are like.
Yeah, to some greater or lesser
Yeah.
extent. So, I understand the question, but it's in retrospect, yes, he should have come off 5 minutes early, but it's easy.
we just wind the clock back and take him off and
Yeah.
then win
Exactly,
the game.
yeah.
If we could get those two cousins of Doctor Who that you were mentioning earlier to have a word.
Interesting comments from O'Brien at the end of the match. Like he didn't hold back,
No.
and which is great to see. And it's the Smith mentality coming through,
Yeah.
isn't it? Where there's no prisoners taken, and even though
Honesty.
a few years ago we would have said, "Oh my God, that was the best performance of all time," and we can nearly retire on it. And like even back 20 odd years ago when Hamilton scored that try, we were getting pints still bought from. Whereas the mentality has changed now that it's like, well, it's not good enough. We're not prepared. And I'm sure O'Brien was having a little dig at Madigan. I presume it was Madigan that he was having a dig at when he basically said, "You have to trust the system, and fellas have to grow up."
Yeah. Oh, in terms of the defensive, yeah. I'd say that there is, especially amongst the younger players like Sean, like Peter O'Mahony, Conor Murray. Maybe not so. I don't mean just to sound like having a dig at Munster, but they haven't been as successful. But the younger Leinster players are used to winning pots all the time, and that's because of the mindset. So, and in fairness to Peter O'Mahony, he doesn't look like a guy who enjoys anything but winning. And Conor Murray the same. So you've got all these younger fellas who have that mindset coming through. So it's like Joe Schmidt also said after the match, a draw would have felt like a loss.
Yeah.
And it's what we were saying at the beginning of the thing. That has to be the start. What we saw on Sunday can't be the end result. It has to be the base level. Because if we're playing international competitive rugby, the only reason you're playing it is to be the best, right? So we have to be the best, and Sunday wasn't good enough.
Sadly,
So we have to add that extra. And that's,
it wasn't a kick in the bollocks of.
I'm not
being
saying
good
this.
enough,
I'm
though.
not
It
saying
was
this to be
so
mean.
close to being
Oh,
good
so
enough.
close. It's 2%, but that's the difference between the All Blacks and South Africa. The All Blacks and Australia. Well, maybe more with Australia, but the best teams are always just 1 or 2% ahead of the next best teams. We want to be 2% ahead of the next best teams. We want to be that team. And these players, Sean O'Brien and Peter O'Mahony and Paul O'Connell and even Brian O'Driscoll, even though he's going to retire, and Johnny Sexton, they want to be the guys who South Africa and the All Blacks are going, how the hell do we get that extra 2% to beat them?
Yeah.
And that's where we have to go.
Well, I'm sure we'll all get over that match.
No, I
Never.
No.
But anyway, there was
Have you gotten over 91 yet? Because I haven't.
no. But anyway, there was another match on at more or less the same time.
Much more important game.
Much more important game over in Treviso. Well, we came away with a hard fought and probably lucky victory.
It certainly was hard fought. Treviso
Put out a decent team.
put out a decent team. We've been saying here that they were going to be very fiercely struck by international absences.
Yeah.
But the team they put on the field was actually very, very strong.
It was.
And the team we put on the field nominally wasn't. But the players really, really... okay, it wasn't the world's greatest performance.
No.
But there were a lot of guys who really stood up.
But we were a point on the right side at the end of the game.
Point on the right side at the end of the game, away from home, against a team that is waiting in the long grass for matches exactly like this.
Yeah.
And there were some superb performances. I have to say, I thought Rhys Ruddock was the
Oh yeah, stand
outstanding performer in that match. He was exceptional, and we've just been lauding, say, the guys who played on Sunday for Ireland, and Kevin McLaughlin being one of those. He's come back now to find.
There's a great headache.
Yeah. He's come back after a great performance against the All Blacks to find, some guys after
There's
kind
this
of
big-
got an eye on his number 6 jersey.
Rhys Ruddock's big white arse is in his way.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think I would play Rhys Ruddock. I'd start him and put McLaughlin on the bench this week.
Yeah, I'd go the same way.
Just because he's had such a good game, and
I think it'd be the right message to send to the squad, wouldn't
and
it?
to take the jersey back off from Kevin McLaughlin if you can, because he's earned it. And his contract's up at the end of the season.
one other thing to note, actually, that surprised me was that somehow Zane Kircher managed to sneak into it.
Yeah, that was great. That was a tricky one, wasn't
Suddenly he was on the pitch, and I had no idea where he came from. He wasn't even in the match squad that was published beforehand.
He wasn't. It was obviously a late release from wherever he was coming from.
France.
That's right, yeah. France. I should watch that match.
Yeah.
Should remember that.
He wasn't in there 24, so
No,
23.
but he was. Yeah, he was probably 24 or 25. He was holding. In case somebody slipped in the shower that morning, or that's probably why they held on to him. But
So you obviously got the Trans Europe Express.
I was about to say he wasn't too far away from Treviso. When you think about it, he was in Paris. So get him down there.
Yeah.
Get him on the field.
And fair play. I mean, fair play. He was there. So, but there was a lot of good. There was a lot of good things. There was some bad things as well in the
But
performance.
I thought, especially, I think it was their first try. They gathered the ball in their 22, and they practically ran 70 odd meters.
Well,
and
Brendan Williams,
slalomed
the ageless Brendan Williams had his hands on the ball about 40 times during it. There was a lot
Did
of.
he do a wraparound to himself?
I think he may have done it at one stage. There was. I'm going to be the first to use the phrase this week. It was a Cura-Teg of a performance. Because some of our defence was not as good as it should have been. Some of our attack lacked precision, but some of it was quite good. Gopperth mixed the good with the bad. I wouldn't start him on Saturday. I'd start Ian Madigan.
I don't know.
Well, we have to make that decision because in 2 weeks' time
we're playing Northampton Saints.
Well, from an Irish point of view, I'd love to see Madigan start. From using the best resources we have, who are we going to put at 12?
Gordon Darcy.
Are we going to play Gordon Darcy this week?
Well,
6 days after he nearly tore the All Blacks a new one.
Well, he only played 2 of the matches, and as far as I know, anyway, Leinster aren't going to play a couple of guys who featured in all 3 matches.
If Gordon Darcy is playing, then I'd definitely play Madigan.
But we have to kind of set some sort of team. It can't be just another scratch team with Northampton looming in the.
We have to start building the team to come together now. Not everybody will be available at once. We have to start putting a few of the building blocks in place.
But Jimmy Gopperth doesn't need necessarily to start. If Madigan has
they should reintegrate Madigan, and I think they should be playing him at 10.
That's my belief is that he should
if they
start
have
at
Darcy,
10.
If they have Darcy,
if they have Darcy, then Madigan should start at 10.
If it's Noel Reid or Ian Madigan at 12.
Noel Reid hasn't been so bad, and I've been
he's a good player in attack.
Again,
it's just when
himself and Mackin together, that's the problem.
Is the problem.
Unless they decide to play Lottie Takiri there.
They're both fine on their own.
Well, I thought Lottie had his best
wouldn't
game
play
for us,
Lottie.
and he looked like that he was back to full fitness.
He looked fit,
Yeah, he
actually.
did look
I mean,
good.
he made a couple of really good runs. He was heavily involved.
Scored a
Obviously, he
try.
scored a try, but he's heavily involved in a lot of our play as well, carrying the ball.
But I thought he looked hungry for the ball,
Yeah.
and they seem to use him. Whereas in a couple of matches we've spoken about that he has played this year, it's almost like he's been used as a decoy.
No, I thought he played well.
When we look at his try.
Because he gets involved a couple of times in this. He has a couple of very good carries.
There was one.
And it was a good offload too.
Brandon Mackin, who looks great going forward.
Yeah, he looks brilliant, but
Fanning.
it's the other way around is the problem. It was. I thought Darren Hudson did quite well.
Yeah, I like him. I've always liked him as a player. He's been unlucky with injury.
There's
That was a
Mulligan
nice
through.
Mullock there.
He really is a huge bloke, isn't he?
Yeah. But he's beginning to. I mean, what people forget is how young he actually is. That was a very clever play, actually, switching that ball.
And off goes Lottie. Oof. There's Hudson now, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's a big guy too. He's about 6'2".
Yeah, he is. I mean, he looks small compared to Lottie Takiri, but he's actually a big bloke.
Most people do.
Yeah, well, that's true. But I mean, there was a lot of good stuff in that try. I mean,
and that's what you're paying your money for Takiri.
Yeah.
Is he has his knack, he has this uncanny sense of the line and getting, you know, he
But
can,
we're also paying him to go and play in matches like this when 17 of the squad are out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's coming in.
he didn't
And
have a huge amount to do there.
If you go through the team sheet, you know, there's very, very few. Like,
it's very callow.
it is, and there was really only a handful of lads that you could say they'll probably be in the Heineken Cup 23. And Lottie brought that experience into the
That's
team.
exactly, that's when you need him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Kirshner too. Andrew Goodman would have been a handy guy to have in that situation, but you know, he's out again for a long period of time. God knows will we see if we don't see him back for the Six Nations. Is it worth having him back? Because he's hardly going to get a look in once it goes into April.
Yeah.
Late March. I mean, if he doesn't get back in before the Six Nations, I'd say that's
Quitens.
That's Coitons, yeah.
Just to revisit Rhys Ruddock, I mean, Ruddock has been the subject of a lot of disappointment over the years. And the weird thing is, people, when Rhys Ruddock came to us, he came as captain of the Ospreys Academy, and people expected him straight away to walk into the team and be, you know, this wrecking ball. What age is Rhys Ruddock?
He's 23 this month.
But look who's ahead of him.
Well, that's what I was coming to. The guy is 23. He's got 2 Lions, a 3-time Heineken Cup winner ahead of him, and Kevin McLaughlin, who's been the mainstay of the Leinster pack for the last 4 years. Yeah. So, I mean,
but he's stuck with Leinster.
But he's stuck,
he's had offers
and
to
he's
go.
Worked hard. And
Munster were after him.
Munster and Ulster were after him.
He's worked hard. You see him, especially in games like this. He always puts his hand up. He captains the team. Yeah. I mean, his performance against Treviso was exceptional. But it's not the only time he's done that in similar profile games. He's one, for a 23-year-old, he's a real leader and a real go-to guy within the squad. And I think that his time is now. I think the disappointment in the past was over-expectation too early. I think now is the time to have expectations of him. And he is delivering on those expectations now.
What I'd be afraid of is that we're the IRFU or the Leinster management or whoever are too focused on keeping Heaslip and O'Brien, and they take too long tying them down and forget about Ruddock, and the next thing you lose Ruddock and you lose them as well. Imagine that.
Munster, Ulster and Connacht are drip feeding their signings. Like, you know, each week there's a couple of lads announced. Leinster have been very quiet on it, but traditionally they seem to release
come out in January with
a list of them.
People.
I've said this on Blues Talk, and I say it again. Leinster's policy is we will release all our signings at the one time.
So he could well be signed up, but just not made public.
Yeah.
It's a very
fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's a strange policy, but it's one that's worked for them in the past, and it's the one they.
Our back row is going to be potentially decimated because you've got Jennings as well, and the high profile Sean O'Brien, Jamie Heaslip, and Ruddock. Like, you know, that's a lot of guys that are up for renewal. You know, Kevin McLaughlin is another year, and so is Ryan. But
just to revisit it, I mean, just going forward for the game against Scarlets, I mean, we're actually okay. We have absences, enforced absences, but we have guys coming back as well. Jordy Murphy made his return.
Yeah.
Dominic Ryan, I thought, looked pretty decent.
He was. Yeah.
You've Ruddock as well. Is Geno around? Did he take a knock?
No, she didn't play.
He didn't play. Oh, of course, yeah, that's right. So Jennings is available.
Yeah.
So you've got decent. I mean, he was supposed to play. That's right. He was supposed to play against Treviso, and then he got called up.
He got called up for the 24th man.
24th man, as it were. So, you know, we have strength in the back row. Certainly enough, I think, to deal with Scarlets.
Well, we'd possibly have. We definitely have Jennings. We'd possibly start Murphy, and then it's. I'd put Ruddock at 6 and McLaughlin on the bench.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That's what I'd do.
Question is, so who would you start at 8? Murphy?
I'd start Murphy at 8 because if he's not match fit, you can take him off when he's knackered. And
Murphy at 8
Ruddock
and Jennings at 7.
Yeah. And move Ruddock to 8 if Murphy gets tired.
Yeah, the other option they might do is try and bring. I see Ben Marshall more as a 6. So they might have him on the bench.
I like him as a tight head lock myself.
And then I don't see him in that position. I think
really?
I just don't think he is. I think he's a 6, and I think he has the potential to be a really, really good one.
He's a great 8 too.
He reminds me a lot of a young Simon Easterby. But in terms of his physique and the way he plays the game, and to be perfectly honest, as a blindside flanker in the modern game, I can't think of much higher praise than that.
Well, if I was going to play him in the back row, I think I'd be looking at him for 8 because we're tripping over 6s.
We are. It is a position that we're overpopulated in, but I think that might be his natural best position. But again,
he's played a lot of 8, I think, underage.
Oh, I think he has, yeah. But to bring it back to Saturday, I'd certainly have him involved as well.
Yeah.
And maybe at a certain point, take Jennings off and switch the back row over one and bring him on at 6. So Ruddock to 8, Murphy to.
Who do you
7.
Who do you drop? Do you not have Kevin McLaughlin on the bench then?
Well, that's the question. That's the tricky thing. I mean,
or do you drop Rue and have Marshall covering the second row? Or,
who are you going to have in the second row? You're assuming that Leo Cullen is back. I don't think he is. I think it's going to be a week too early.
I think it's a week too soon. But
you might want to give him some. You might have him on the bench and keep him. Give him a bit of time.
I wouldn't be surprised if we end up starting with Rue and McCarthy as our second row.
I'm not a great fan of that because they're both a bit short.
I'm not a great fan of it either, but I think it might be what we have to go with.
I'd nearly play one of them on the bench and put Denton on.
Would you? Yeah.
Just for that, to have that athletic kind of
it's
like you've got two scrummaging locks.
Yeah, Denton has played well.
Played either two.
3 games on the bounce, including British and Irish Cup. 2 games on the bounce away from home. Might be time for him to show what he's become to the RDS public, because he has been again subject to a certain amount of criticism for his performances over the last 12 months. And rightly so. But I think people expected him, because he's not a native player, to come in straight away and be challenging. I think he was a guy that was always going to be there to develop for a bit before he came into the team.
He's quite young too. He's 24,
well, that's it.
25 maybe.
So maybe it's time for him to give a home audience a view of what he has become at this point in his.
If Cullen isn't fit, I would probably start him and put one of Rue or McCarthy on the bench. Just personally, I just think they're two. Neither of them are good enough in the line out, and they're both great in the scrum. They're too similar, if you know what I mean.
The only thing is they're not exactly up against the Toulouse line out here.
Well, that's true, but the Scarlets, as remember when they beat Ulster, they only lose 1 player to Wales.
Well, that's
in the pack. So it's their pack that's quite decent. So I wouldn't be taking them for granted in the pack at all.
We did hammer them at the start of the season, though.
We did.
So we've got a very good record against them. I think we've only lost once in the last 12 games.
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
And although funnily enough, the first time they played us when we played them in the RDS in 2007, that game became one of the motivating factors
20 or something
for the entire Cheika reign, because he never wanted to see something like that happen again. He used that game repeatedly over his entire reign as one of his big motivators.
So anyway, the victory over Treviso brought us up into 3rd.
Very tidy bit of business.
Yeah, I think we've won 5 and drawn 1 of our 8 games. So
crucially, we've got nearly all of our away games against the top 6. I think we've only got 2 left.
Yeah, we've played Glasgow, we've played Munster, Ospreys.
Yeah, so there's only 5 other people in the top 6.
Yeah.
Scarlets. Scarlets are nominally in the top 6. We've been away to them as well.
Well, one nice bit of business for us anyway was the Dragons beating Glasgow at the weekend. That was a result that we weren't really predicting.
No.
Somebody here mentioned it might happen.
Did he?
He did.
Who, Dave?
Well, we did say. I've been saying it. I mean, Dragons aren't as bad as everyone thinks they are, and Glasgow lose an awful lot of players to Scotland. So there was always the vague possibility of it happening, and that vague possibility came through.
Yeah, and some of the results. Unfortunately, Connacht seems to be on just a downward spiral. They were beaten by Scarlets at the weekend.
Yeah. I just feel bad for Connacht. Like if they still they've only beaten Zebre.
Yeah.
In the whole season, that's
twice.
Yeah, no, but it's still only Zebre.
And then they have Toulouse in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, you just fear for them, because if that run doesn't stop soon, and if they've Toulouse back to back in the Heineken Cup, it's not going to stop soon,
And with Edinburgh away, obviously Edinburgh can turn over teams, as they proved against Munster in the Heineken.
New coach Solomon's now in there.
But they were stuffed by Ulster up in Ravenhill.
Big time.
Yeah. They got absolutely man-shamed up there. But
great to see Craig Gilroy coming back.
It wasn't much of a contest.
But Gilroy came back, and he'd been obviously out with injury, but he's come back and scored 2 tries.
In fairness, I'd have fancied either of you for 2 tries against that Edinburgh team.
I just gave the winning pass, Dave.
Yeah. They were very, very poor. It's what we said about Ulster last week, that they were kind of developing depth, which they didn't have before. Edinburgh don't have any depth, so when they lose players to the Scotland setup, they are absolutely boned.
Their pack wasn't so bad though. Their pack going
The
into
pack
it.
isn't so good.
No,
Whether
2
it's-
South African props. They've got a few
Yeah.
decent players in there. Nell and Blau, is it the 2 props? And like as I said, I didn't see the game, but on paper that pack didn't look. The backline looked.
The problem was it was
horrendous.
tissue paper.
Yeah, but I suppose Edinburgh will probably be drip feeding some of their internationals back in, and they put up a reasonable performance against Australia.
Edinburgh did.
Yeah,
Sorry, Scotland. No, Scotland did.
Edinburgh played very well.
Yeah, it was.
Glasgow lost them the game there.
I think that game was what Matt Williams has often said about Australians not knowing how to play in the wet. They didn't know how to play in the wet, and they didn't know how to play with the nematodes either. So, I mean, it's actually quite a good performance from Australia to get through that game, because Scotland have
They'll
ambushed.
have the hex over them a little bit. Yeah.
Scotland have ambushed quite a few teams on mucky reeky days in Edinburgh, so they have. They
beat them in a flood over in Australia.
In Australia.
9-6 there last year.
They don't know how to play in the rain. So I'd say Australia would be more pleased would actually be quite pleased with getting out of Scotland with everything intact.
Well, Munster hammered Cardiff as well. I mean, it was a good weekend for Irish teams.
Oh, absolutely
That was
destroyed
a
them.
Terrible match.
Oh.
I only watched the first half, and I believe I didn't miss much in the second half.
Well, one guy that did show up very well, I thought, was JJ Hanrahan. I thought he had a super game, and he got all his kicks and really dictated the pace of the
I
game.
think Cardiff put it up to Munster. I mean, at some point, some of the Munster players had to break into a jog. Now, Munster were just way, way better than Cardiff.
Yeah.
Way, 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 way.
But again,
way
on
better.
paper, they had a very good team. I mean, because they only had whatever it was, 4 or 5 players with Ireland, they had a huge amount of people to choose from. That we didn't, for example, the downside of having so many people with Ireland. So on paper, their team was way better than Cardiff, and it was the same on grass.
Yeah, and Tom.
Not even on grass.
Whatever.
It was the same.
yeah.
It was the same on carpet.
Yeah, but Tommy O'Donnell has also announced that
Yeah.
he signed for
Yeah,
another couple
another
of
good
years.
one, yeah.
He's good.
Good
player
sign,
for
good young
them,
player. Yeah.
And I suppose the match of the weekend, I suppose, not involves Leinster, is Ospreys against Glasgow. It's kind of a top of the table
Top
clash.
6 game. Yeah.
And hopefully one of the other will take a few points off.
I can see that being a 9-6. I don't know which way, but I can see it being a 9-6.
Glasgow should have it on paper again, because the Wales are playing their extra international game for the few quid to pay off the Millennium Stadium. So
Pay off to put a few coins in the meter for the floodlights.
exactly. So you would expect Glasgow to win, who will be drip feeding back in their internationals. You wouldn't know though. Ospreys at home.
Yeah,
Well, Glasgow in a bit of
Glasgow coming off.
they've lost 2
at
of their
home.
last 3 actually.
it does smack of a 9-6 though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it should be a good weekend anyway. So thanks a million, lads, and thanks a million for watching. Cheers.